Okay, so now that we've created our variables in our contract, the next thing that we want to create together is a constructor function. So what is a constructor? Well, a constructor is a special type of function that's going to execute when we deploy our Solidity smart contract. So we make a constructor just by writing in constructor, okay? And then it's a function. We bring in our argument brackets. And then what we're going to do is have our curly brackets to put the object information in the function, just like with JavaScript. This is very similar to JavaScript. And we're actually going to make this constructor public. And the public keyword in Solidity is another very important keyword. So public, what it does is that it grants visibility. You're enabling this function to be called within this contract, but also outside of this contract too. So now we're going to add another special keyword to our constructor as well, and that's going to be payable. And payable is also another very important and special keyword in Solidity. Okay, so we are allowing this function to send and receive Ether. And that's what makes it very special. Once we deploy this contract with payable, we're going to be able to initialize our fortune with an Ether balance. So we're going to give this Ether balance to the constructor now, and we're going to give it a Ether balance of 50. And we're just going to do this just to demonstrate how everything's going to work. Let's set our variables here in our constructor and initialize them to something. So what should we set them to? Well, the owner, we're going to set it equal. So we're going to write owner equals msg dot sender. All right. And I'm going to explain this in a second. All right. So what is msg dot sender? Well, msg stands for message. And what this really means is that the owner is going to be representation of who is calling this address. So whoever is calling this address, it's a representation of the address that is calling the function. It's okay if that doesn't make any sense yet, but essentially what this means is that we're going to set the message sender to the owner. And in this case, the owner is going to be our friend's great-grandfather or our friend's grandfather or whatever. So what we are effectively doing is we are setting up an address, and it's called owner, and then we are setting up this address to be the person who is actually calling the contract, the person who's executing the contract, which is going to be us. And again, if that doesn't make sense yet, don't worry. It's going to make a lot more sense when we actually execute this contract and we go through how everything works. So for now, don't worry, and we're going to keep going through it together. So we add a semicolon, sorry. The next thing we want to look at is fortune. So what is the fortune going to equal? Well, just like how the owner equals message.sender, the fortune is going to actually be message.value. And message.value, essentially, it's another built-in global method, or another built-in method in message, value, and sender that's built in. And what value does effectively is just show us how much Ether is being sent. Okay, so message sender calls represents the address that is being called, whereas message value tells us how much Ether is being sent. Okay. And finally, we can't forget deceased, right? So deceased. And we're actually going to set up deceased to false. And we're going to do this because, logically speaking, we're going to assume that from how our contract is initially executed, how our contract is initially being set up, our friend's grandfather is still not deceased. So we're just going to start it that way and say this is false for now, and then we're going to switch it to true and then see if our smart contract works together.